Everyone feels sad sometimes, right? That's just part of being human. But depression? Well, depression is different. Welcome to this explainer on depression, the invisible battle of the mind. Today, we're unpacking a hidden struggle, one that affects millions of people across literally every age, culture, and walk of life.
So let's start with part 1, sadness versus depression. Like we just said, feeling sad sometimes is completely normal, but we've really got to distinguish that everyday human emotion from something much, much heavier. Sadness is kind of like a temporary visitor. It might pop in for a day or two, and then it just quietly leaves. Depression, though, it's fundamentally different. It lingers indefinitely. It essentially sets up camp in your mind and flat out refuses to pack up.
Which brings us to part 2. Meet Ben and the mask he wears.
Imagine you see a guy named Ben walking down the street. You probably wouldn't think anything was wrong at all. I mean, he gets up every morning, he goes to work, he replies to his messages, he even laughs when everyone else is laughing. From the outside looking in, Ben seems totally fine. But appearances can be incredibly misleading. Because behind that mask of everyday normalcy, his inside reality is just exhausting.
Because his mind is constantly asking one devastating question: why bother? Every single morning before Ben even rolls out of bed, this incredibly heavy question just hits him. And it's absolutely crucial to understand here. This isn't happening because he doesn't care about his life. And it is definitely not because he's just being lazy. It is the condition speaking. It literally drains the color and purpose from his day before his feet even hit the floor.
Let's move to part 3, the invisible weight.
Because of the way depression distorts reality, the absolute simplest, most basic routines turn into these monumental challenges. We're talking about making breakfast, answering a simple text message, just taking a shower. To anyone else, these are just ordinary, thoughtless moments in a day, right? But to Ben, they can literally feel like climbing a mountain. The condition makes even the tiniest task feel impossibly heavy to carry out.
And here's the tragic reality. Depression doesn't always look like tears. Honestly, perhaps the absolute hardest part for Ben and millions of people just like him is that no one else can see this immense, invisible weight he's lugging around. Sometimes depression just looks like someone doing absolutely everything in their power to convince the world that they're okay, while secretly being completely exhausted by the effort.
So that really begs the question, what is actually happening inside the mind of someone living with depression? Why does life just begin to lose its color? And crucially, how does someone eventually find their way back? Let's pivot from Ben's personal story and look at the broader clinical picture to find out.
Part 4, myths and misunderstandings.
Even though this affects millions of people, it's still surrounded by so many societal myths. A lot of folks think it's just sadness, but the reality, it's a lingering, highly distinct clinical condition. Others see a lack of motivation when in truth, it's that impossibly heavy psychological weight we just talked about. And honestly, the most harmful myth of all is the idea that it's just something you can get over. The reality is that it physically and chemically alters the way the brain functions. Let's make one thing absolutely clear. Depression is not a choice, it is not a character flaw, and it is definitely no sign of weakness.
Let's dive into part 5, the psychological reality.
When you move past the myths and look at what psychology actually tells us, the underlying science is super clear. Depression is defined as a condition that profoundly changes the very way the brain processes emotion, motivation, hope, and the future. It's a fundamental rewiring of how we experience being human.
Let's break down exactly what comes under attack in the mind here. First up, emotion. Things that used to bring genuine joy suddenly just feel entirely flat. Second, motivation. This is where getting out of bed feels like that mountain climb. Third is hope. That fundamental core belief that things can and will improve, it just begins to vanish entirely. And finally, the future itself. Depression literally changes the brain's ability to even picture a positive tomorrow.
So to really understand depression, we first need to understand the mind. It is a deeply complex, invisible battle. But by shining a light on this psychological reality, we can start to replace judgment with genuine empathy for others and, hey, maybe even for ourselves. I really hope this explainer leaves you with a much better understanding of how incredibly complex our brains are and why compassion matters so much. Thanks for hanging out with me to explore this, and I'll catch you on the next one.